On the morning of August 2nd, 2020, fans of the New York Mets awoke to unexpected news. Their left fielder had gone missing. Now, it's not as if Mets fans are strangers to weird stories about their team. In fact, the only predictable thing about Queens' finest ball club is how unpredictable it is. But even for fans of the most dysfunctional team in baseball, the news that Yoenis Céspedes, their once beloved star turned pariah, had seemingly vanished into thin air came as a bit of a shock. To those who had been paying attention, however, Céspedes' sudden disappearance came as no surprise. This latest episode was the long-awaited climax of a turbulent 5-year saga, which saw the Mets reach their first World Series in decades, a string of controversies a mile long, and perhaps the most bizarre baseball injury this side of Joel Zumaya's Guitar Hero addiction. Let's take a look at the one-in-a-million set of circumstances that led Yoenis Céspedes to have what very well may have been the weirdest career in Major League Baseball history. On the morning of November 9th, 2011, a video was uploaded to YouTube by user Christopher Ray. Entitled The Showcase, it claimed to feature footage of a once-in-a-lifetime baseball talent, someone who could bench 350 pounds with ease, nail targets from the outfield with surgical precision, and swat home runs like it was nothing. Over the next few weeks, the video would rack up tens of thousands of views, not to mention the attention of more than a few major league clubs. It seemed too good to be true. A 5-tool player ready-made for MLB competition. But the question still remained. Just who was this guy? First though, I want to give a quick shout out to the sponsor of today's video, SeatGeek. I'm going to let you in on a secret. I've been using SeatGeek since long before they started paying me to say that I do. In fact, at the time of writing this, I'm on my way back from a Dodgers game in which I saw Hunter Green set a record for most pitches at 100+ miles an hour, missed a Trey Turner home run while waiting in line for a hot dog, and almost had to fight a guy for Amari Wills' bobblehead, all with the ticket I bought using SeatGeek. Their app made buying tickets super simple, and now that baseball is officially back, SeatGeek wants to give you that very same, well, maybe not very same, experience. By using the promo code HISTORIAN at checkout, you can get $20 off your first purchase with the app, which you can just so happen to download using the link in the description. That's promo code HISTORIAN for $20 off your first SeatGeek order. Now back to the video. Yoenis Céspedes was born in Cuba on October 18, 1985. The son of an Olympian softball pitcher and a former Cuban League catcher, one could say that the young Céspedes was born to play baseball. It was his mother who made Yoenis his first bat, carved out of a tree branch and polished with glass. By the time he was 10, it was clear that his small hometown of Campechuela wasn't enough to contain his raw talent. He was sent to a state-run school 50 miles away in order to hone his already noteworthy skills. It was at this time that he earned a nickname that would stick with him for the rest of his life: La Potencia, the power. Despite this, Yoenis Céspedes never even dreamed that he would one day make it to the big leagues. Defection from Cuba was a treacherous process, one which would threaten not only his safety, but that of those closest to him as well. At only 18 years old, this was a risk the young star was not yet ready to take. He spent 8 seasons in the Cuban Winter League and represented his country in the 2009 World Baseball Classic, hitting an impressive .458 over 6 games. It was a performance worthy of international attention, which made it all the more surprising when he was snubbed a roster spot on Cuba's national team only 2 years later. It was at this point that the now 25-year-old Céspedes made a decision that would change the course of his life. He was going to flee Cuba, and soon. He connected with Edgar Mercedes, a well-known agent out of the Dominican Republic who would be able to assist him with the defection process. By establishing residency in the Dominican Republic first, Mercedes explained, Céspedes would become a free agent, allowing him to skip the lengthy and far less lucrative MLB draft that would have awaited him had he defected straight to the US instead. But he had to get there first. That summer, Céspedes and his family began their preparations for the journey, renting a house on the coast. It was here that he hit his first roadblock on his path to the majors, when his mother and several others were apprehended on the beach and subsequently held for days as the authorities questioned them about the missing superstar. He fled the island a week later, along with 6 others on the 23-hour boat ride to the Dominican Republic. The defection of one of their top athletes prompted the Cuban government to arrest and interrogate Céspedes' relatives about his whereabouts, even jailing one of them for 3 days. Still, the future looked bright for the young player. Mercedes immediately put Céspedes to work training, paying him $3,500 a month as he worked to drum up interest in his new client. It was also Mercedes' idea to upload a video of Céspedes training to YouTube in order to showcase his on-field talents and raw power. It was an unconventional move, but one which quickly paid off when he was given a contract that February by the Oakland Athletics for a whopping $36 million over 4 years. Yoenis Céspedes, already a long way from home, was finally on his way to the big leagues. It didn't take long for Céspedes to make a splash for the A's. After a solid spring training, during which he smashed a home run in his first ever at-bat in the United States, millions of baseball fans excitedly tuned in on opening day to see what the Cuban prospect would do. He made his MLB debut on March 28, 2012, bringing up the 7-hole against the Mariners in the opening series in Japan. He went 1 for 3 with a leadoff double in the 7th inning, marking his first career major league hit. The next day, he belted his first MLB home run, a 2-run shot to left center off of Seattle reliever Shawn Kelley, and he didn't slow down from there. Over 129 games played in his first MLB season, Yoenis Céspedes hit to the tune of a .292 average, with his 23 home runs and 139 OPS+, placing him among the best hitters in the American League. His 4 wins above replacement were good for 3rd among all rookies, and he almost certainly would have taken home the Rookie of the Year honors too, if it wasn't for some guy from Jersey having one of the greatest years of all time. But Michael Nelson Trout notwithstanding, Yoenis Céspedes had firmly secured himself a spot as one of the most exciting young players in the game, leading Oakland to their first AL West title since 2006. Over the 5-game American League Division Series versus the Tigers, Céspedes led the A's in hits, OPS, and win probability added. It wasn't enough to pull out the series, however, as they fell to Detroit 3-2. Céspedes and the A's entered the 2013 season looking to build on the success of the previous year's campaign. The team had made a flurry of moves that offseason in an attempt to bolster the roster, trading for outfielder Chris Young from Arizona, acquiring catcher John Jaso from Seattle, and bringing in former shortstop Jed Lowry and reliever Fernando Rodriguez from the now division rival Houston Astros. Throw in a full season from Josh Donaldson and a return to form from veteran starter and male model Bartolo Colon, and the A's were primed to repeat as AL West champs. By the time the All-Star break came around, it appeared that this prediction was holding true. Oakland was leading the Rangers in the West by 2 games, and their .589 winning percentage had them on pace for a 95-win season. Unfortunately for Yoenis Céspedes, however, he had been unable to recapture the magic of his red-hot rookie season during the first half. His .225 batting average through 79 games was positively anemic, and his .713 OPS was well below the .861 mark he had put up the year before, in large part thanks to an 85-point drop in his slugging. That didn't stop AL team captain Robinson Cano from selecting him for the 2013 Home Run Derby, making him the only participant that year who had not also been voted to the All-Star team. What followed was one of the most legendary displays of power anyone had ever seen.
2.5 years ago, Cuba. Tonight, New York, for the chance to win the Chevrolet Home Run Derby. Oh, and he wins it with aplomb! Back, 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 back! Gone! Yoenis Céspedes has won the Home Run Derby!
As it would turn out, Yoenis Céspedes' historic Home Run Derby victory would be the high watermark for the Stars' tenure with the Athletics. He finished off the 2013 season with 26 homers, but his .240 average and 103 OPS+ left many with doubts about his long-term outlook. The remainder of Céspedes' time in Oakland was, if not as statistically impressive as his rookie outing, no less exhilarating. At no point was this more apparent than on June 10, 2014, when he was responsible for a play so incredible, so unbelievable, that it can be summed up in just 2 words: the throw. Let's break this play down shot by shot. We begin in the 8th inning, with the score tied at 1 and Howie Kendrick on first. At the plate is none other than Mike Trout himself, in the midst of a season which would see him take home unanimous AL MVP honors. As he is wont to do, Trout lines a rocket to left field, where Yoenis Céspedes is stationed. Now, here's where things get interesting. As Céspedes runs to intercept the liner, he momentarily takes his eye off the ball in an attempt to gauge the runner's location. As a result, he misplays the bounce and the ball tumbles away towards foul territory. In the meantime, Kendrick is rounding third, well on his way to an easy, game-tying run scored. At least, that's what he, along with anyone else watching not named Yoenis Céspedes, thought. Because, as the camera cuts back to the wide angle, viewers are greeted with an unexpected sight: the baseball, in midair, sailing towards home plate with missile-like precision, nabbing the bewildered speedster 300 feet away with no time to spare.
Are you kidding me? Wow.
In the span of 11 seconds, Yoenis Céspedes had turned what was an otherwise unremarkable game into the site of one of the most spectacular plays in MLB history, all while barely breaking a sweat. This putout was one of a league-leading 10 on the season up to that point, a feat which played no small part in earning him the third most All-Star votes for the AL, behind only Jose Bautista and Trout. His bat had started to come around as well, and by July 1st he was hitting .273 with 14 home runs and 55 RBI. He made his return to the Home Run Derby a few weeks later, beating out Todd Frazier to take home his second consecutive title, making him the first to do so since Ken Griffey Jr. in 1999. But it wasn't enough for Oakland, who, in classic A's style, capitalized on Céspedes' hot start by flipping him to the Boston Red Sox for pitcher John Lester and utility man Johnny Gomes. Almost immediately upon his arrival, it became clear to Céspedes that Boston was not going to be his home long-term. Despite a strong second half, in which he hit .269 while knocking in 33 runs over 51 games, he was unable to dig the Red Sox out of the bottom of the AL East for a second straight season. On top of that, the Sluggers' relationship with the team's coaching staff had taken a turn for the worse, seemingly overnight. In an interview with USA Today given years later, Céspedes explained that first base coach Arnie Baylor had treated him like a rookie upon his arrival, much to the then 29-year-old's chagrin. To make matters worse, following the conclusion of the 2014 season, Céspedes announced that he would be switching agents to Jay-Z's Rock Nation. It was a decision that did little to help his chances of remaining in Boston, who prior to the move had planned to at least engage with the star on a possible extension. Now, however, with Céspedes linked to an agency renowned for their aggressive, expensive negotiation tactics, the chances of a reunion were looking slim. Or, as one insider put it, he marches to his own drum and the coaches all hate him. Whatever the reason, few were surprised when it was announced that December that the Red Sox had dealt their troubled left fielder to the Detroit Tigers as part of a package deal for future Cy Young winner Rick Porcello. Detroit, themselves coming off of their 4th straight division title, were in desperate need of corner outfield help, and Céspedes fit the bill. Unfortunately, it appeared that time had finally caught up to the aging core of the once perennial World Series contender. Injuries had kept veteran Miguel Cabrera off the field for much of the season, while Porcello's replacement in Alfredo Simon was nothing short of terrible, posting a .505 ERA over 31 starts for the declining club. As for Céspedes, he had performed like his usual self, slugging an impressive .506 with a .125 OPS plus through 102 games. So when the Tigers realized at the trade deadline that their odds of repeating as division champs were in freefall, they began shopping around for potential suitors. It didn't take long to find a match.
Moments before the deadline, the Mets picked up the big bat they were looking for, acquiring outfielder Yoenis Céspedes from the Detroit Tigers.
Yeah, talking to my mirror like I love you so much, curving on my critics like I heard you, so what? You can't kill my confidence, I think I'm the man. Tally all the I ever gave on my head. Lately I've been living like I can't take a loss. They ain't wanna help me, that's what made me a boss. You can't kill my confidence, I think I'm the man. We don't give a that's what they don't understand. I'm back again like flu season, I broke records while loose leafing. I'm coming down my roof, leaving, don't give a I don't care. Did the by my lonesome, no wonder now I'm on one. No shortcuts on that long run, all I really want is my share. Get him, I got him, I told him it's nothing. In the discussion, all them feelings, I throw all my pain on percussion. slow-mo, showboat, rowboat, wave ride. Cool shorty, too naughty, pool party, wet for the face ride. Annie up, penny down, hand me down, thrift store, old drip. New money, too funny, old shorty, talk about old. I'm on they now, can't get a pass now. I'm a cash cow, keeping it brash now. It's trash now, I'm a spaz out. I've been killing my lows and living on highs. You see in the skies the proof. You could just see in my eyes that there is no lies. I cannot disguise the truth. I've been duck dog, getting in my new merch, color duck sauce on the new couch with my chucks on. Get the on with that hate. I'm big cool on the small chat, cause I know now that I'm all that. Got a hawk guy on the ball cat, get the out of my face. Talking to my mirror like I love you so much. Curving on my critics like I heard you, so what? You can't kill my confidence, I think I'm the man. Tally all the I ever gave on my head. Lately I've been living like I can't take a loss. They ain't wanna help me, that's what made me a boss. You can't kill my confidence, I think I'm the man. We don't give a that's what they don't understand.
In his first 41 games played for New York, Yoenis Céspedes racked up an incredible 54 hits, 42 RBI, to go along with 36 runs scored and a 1048 OPS. And while it would be unfair to expect him to have kept up this pace for a full season, that doesn't make it any less fun to imagine. Extrapolated over 162 games, Céspedes' initial rate of production with the Mets would have seen him reach 213 hits, score 142 runs, knock in 167 RBI, and crush a whopping 67 home runs. In other words, while the Mets thought they were trading for 2015 Yoenis Céspedes, they ended up instead with 1998 Sammy Sosa. Not a bad deal. By the time the division series rolled around, Céspedes had admittedly cooled down a bit from his blistering start in New York. Unfortunately for the Dodgers, that didn't stop him from almost single-handedly leading the Mets to a Game 3 win against LA, in large part thanks to a 3-run, 431-foot shot to Citi Field's second deck. He repeated that performance in Game 3 of the NLCS with yet another 3-hit outing, this time driving a double to left field in the first to open up the scoring against the Cubs. Just something about Game 3s, I guess. The World Series, however, got off to a, shall we say, less than spectacular start. On the first offering from Mets starter Matt Harvey, Royals leadoff batter Alcides Escobar knocked a line drive to center. Céspedes proceeded to boot the ball into left field, cementing his unfortunate role in the first World Series inside the park home run since 1929. And while the rest of the series didn't go quite as poorly for Céspedes, he was only able to manage 3 hits across 21 plate appearances, as the Mets lost 4 games to 1. All things considered though, no one could deny that Yoenis Céspedes' debut with the Mets was anything less than successful. So when he hit the free agent market that winter, it didn't come as much of a shock when it was announced that he would be returning to Queens, this time on a 3-year, $75 million contract. He followed up his historic second half in 2015 with an All-Star 2016 season, slugging 31 home runs with an .884 OPS, enough to earn him 8th place in that year's NL MVP voting. It also turned out to be enough for him to exercise his opt-out that offseason, which he swiftly turned into a 4-year deal with New York worth $110 million. At $27.5 million a year, it made Céspedes the 8th highest paid player in MLB history in terms of average annual value, and tied him for 3rd all-time among position players. That didn't mean there weren't concerns, however. At 30 years old, there were rumblings about Céspedes' ability to keep up his rate of production, especially considering the fact that he had lost several games the previous season to lingering leg issues. There were also worries within the Mets front office about his judgment. In August of 2016, former player turned MLB Network personality Kevin Millar tweeted a photo of himself golfing alongside Céspedes. Now, that in and of itself wasn't necessarily a problem. Céspedes' passion for golf was well known, and he maintained that it helped keep his mind relaxed in addition to improving his baseball swing. The issue was that this photo was posted the same day the Mets had announced that they were placing their star outfielder on the DL with a quadriceps injury. And while Céspedes, along with the team doctors, insisted that his golf game would have no impact on the injury, the optics were undeniably bad. In the short term, though, the new contract meant one thing for Yoenis Céspedes: money, and a whole lot of it. Expensive cars aside, the young 2017 season started off promising for both Céspedes and the Mets. New York found themselves on top of the NL East through the first 2 weeks, while Céspedes was sporting a .688 slugging percentage to go along with 6 home runs. Of those 6, half of them came on April 11th, when he crushed 3 home runs as part of a 14-4 rout of the Phillies. It was also one of the last bright spots in the soon-to-be complicated relationship between the two parties. Mets fans were hit with an unexpected bout of whiplash in the 4th inning of a late April game versus the Braves, when Céspedes knocked a leadoff double to right center, only to pull up after rounding first with an apparent leg injury. He was placed on the DL the next day with a strained hamstring, beginning a run of injuries that would frankly be impressive in terms of their sheer frequency, if it wasn't so depressing. He spent the entire month of May out of the lineup, and while he did make a return that June, his other hamstring gave out by late August, ending his season after just 81 games. This is the best team that I've been around. These were the words of Yoenis Céspedes, spoken on the eve of opening day for the 2018 season. It was a bold claim, especially considering that the Mets had finished out the previous year with a 70-92 record, 17 games shy of a playoff spot. However, with the rotation headed by aces Jacob deGrom, Zach Wheeler, and Noah Syndergaard, and a lineup that included free agent signings in Todd Frazier and Jay Bruce, there was reason for some cautious optimism. Unfortunately, those hopes were dashed pretty quickly, when it was announced in mid-May that Céspedes would be heading to the DL once again, this time to give him an opportunity to fully recover from a hip injury that had been preventing him from playing at 100%. At the time of this announcement, the Mets were sitting at 4th place in the division, though they were only 4.5 games back from the 26-16 Braves. By the time he made his return 2 months later, however, New York had dropped to 27-34, 7 games below 500 and 9 back in the East. But following a 2-for-4 performance against the Yankees in his first game back, highlighted by a homer off the left field foul pole, many naysayers began to reconsider what had previously been written off as yet another lost season for the Mets. Or at least they would have, if it wasn't for the obvious fact that Céspedes was still not quite healthy. As they watched the former All-Star round the bases, it was hard for onlookers to ignore the gingerness in his step. Something was up. Mets fans' worst fears were confirmed 5 days later, when it was announced that their prized slugger would be undergoing multiple surgeries to remove bone spurs and calcification in both of his heels. He would be out anywhere from 8 to 10 months, bringing yet another premature end to his season and putting the beginning of the next in jeopardy as well. Now, most of the time when a player's career ends via injury, it isn't very dramatic, or even all that interesting. But, like most things in Yoenis Céspedes' life, the injury that, for all intents and purposes, brought his time in the majors to a close, was anything but boring. It started off small, with an announcement that Céspedes would likely be out for the season after breaking his ankle in multiple places at his Port St. Lucie ranch. Details of the accident were few and far between, and Mets GM Brodie Van Wagenen would only say that the injury was the result of a violent fall. Céspedes did miss the entire 2019 season, while New York finished 3rd in the NL East, 7 games behind the eventual world champion Washington Nationals. That offseason, amidst swirling rumors about his future with the club, it was revealed that Céspedes and the Mets had agreed to restructure the 34-year-old's contract, cutting his 2020 salary from the original $29.5 million to less than $10 million. It was a severe cut in pay, passed down following the conclusion of an investigation into whether Céspedes had violated the terms of his contract. By this point in time, a few more details had trickled out regarding the circumstances of the injury. The first was that it had occurred while Céspedes was engaged in a, quote, non-baseball related activity. The second was that Céspedes had reportedly suffered the fractures when he stepped into a hole and twisted himself into a difficult position. Beyond that, however, there was little more revealed from either party concerning the incident. That is, until January 3, 2020, when the New York Post published an article which would end up taking the situation from merely unfortunate to downright bizarre. According to the United States Department of Agriculture, adult feral swine weigh, on average, anywhere from 75 to 250 pounds, with some growing up to twice as large in size. Now that you've got a picture of the absolute enormity of these things, I'd like you to imagine one barreling straight at you, full force, and you can begin to understand Yoenis Céspedes' frame of mind when this exact situation occurred to him in May of 2019. According to multiple sources familiar with the incident, Céspedes was in the process of checking the board traps he had set up on his ranch when one got loose and began charging. In the ensuing chaos, he stepped into a nearby hole, resulting in the ankle injury which would ultimately spell the end of his 2019 season. Both team officials and representatives for Céspedes visited the ranch the day after he reported the event and were satisfied with his account, though let's be real, this isn't really something you could make up anyway. For anybody else, this would have been the single most outlandish moment in one's career, but Yoenis Céspedes still had one more surprise up his sleeve. Now, I'm not going to get into the nitty-gritty of the delayed start to the 2020 MLB season, because 1, anyone watching this probably still remembers what happened. Moreover, if anyone is somehow still watching this in a future when the global pandemic isn't still in the news, then I'll do you a favor and not remind you. All you need to know is that the Mets, along with most of the league, didn't begin their 2020 season until Friday, July 24th. Also making his 2020 debut was Yoenis Céspedes, apparently healthy and by this point several months removed from the controversies that had overtaken the news cycle earlier in the year. In the 7th inning, he showed what he was still capable of, cracking a solo shot to deep left to score the sole run of New York's opening day victory against Atlanta. It was a sign of life for a player whose career had been presumed dead in the water only months before. Not to mention a bit of history, as he became the first designated hitter to hit a home run in a National League game. Then came the bad news. Heading into their August 2nd game versus the Braves, the Mets were faced with a serious problem. Yoenis Céspedes, their $110 million man, was nowhere to be found. There had been no announcement as to his whereabouts, no indication of what he might be doing, not even so much as a phone call from the All-Star. Amid speculation by fans and members of the media alike, the club frantically, and unsuccessfully, tried to make contact with the missing star. By the time the game rolled around, all the team knew for sure was that the outfielder had not reported to the ballpark. It was an alarming situation to say the least. So much so that when Céspedes finally did reach out to the Mets to notify them that he would be opting out for the remainder of the 2020 season, it came as a relief more than anything else. In a way, though, it was also the fitting end to what had been one of the most turbulent careers in MLB history. And while his overall numbers may not place Yoenis Céspedes among the greatest of all time, there's no denying that he was one of the most exciting players to reach the league in recent memory. There were reports in early 2021 that Céspedes was attempting an MLB comeback, and he drew interest from nearly a dozen teams at a showcase that March. The Mets were not among them. But as the 2021 season came and went, and a major league contract failed to materialize, many were left with one final question. What's next for Yoenis Céspedes? Well, there's only one person who can answer that. But in the meantime, however, fans can look forward to the arrival of another Céspedes to the scene, Yoenis' half-brother, Yoelki. In many ways, Yoenis Céspedes' path to the big leagues so far has charted a similar course as his brothers before him. After defecting from Cuba in 2019, he signed a $2.05 million deal with the White Sox in January of 2021 as MLB's #2 international prospect. And while a slow start to the 2021 minor league season and some issues with the strike zone have put a damper on his journey to the show, the 24-year-old has shown that he possesses many of the same tools that made his older sibling one of the most feared sluggers in the game. So while it may not happen this season, it likely won't be long until we see a Céspedes roaming the outfield for a major league team once again. And when that day finally comes, you can bet Yoenis will be there too.